Good morning, and welcome to Morning Movie News, where Disney's live-action Beauty and the Beast continues to make headlines, but suddenly, the wrong kind of headlines. Yes, I've never seen a movie implode like Beauty and the Beast did on Friday. A complete reversal of fortune, potentially, literally, as this picture that once seemed like it would make $1 billion, maybe $2 billion at the box office, now seems in financial peril. And things only seem to be getting worse. So I'm going to walk you through what happened and why I think it did. So the first sign that things were not good was that the embargo lifted Friday at noon, and it started out on Rotten Tomatoes with a 50%. That's so horrible. And it settled only at 74, right? Once all the reviews started to come in. And it should at least be in the 80s. I think for this kind of movie, you want it to be in the 90s. And then it got sucker punched as it was reeling from the Rotten Tomatoes score by an announcement from an Alabama theater, one single theater, but it was the announcement heard around the world that they would not be playing the film. It's a small little mom and pop theater, or actually in this case a grandma and grandpop theater, and they said in their Facebook statement that they couldn't play a movie they couldn't watch with their 8 and 10-year-old grandchildren. Although they also added they couldn't watch a movie that they couldn't watch with Jesus. And I have to say, on a side note, Jesus's whole thing was that he liked everyone. I mean, his best friend was a hooker, and he gave lepers hugs. So I think he would have been fine with the LGBT community, guys. I think it's absolutely ridiculous. So that Jesus comment to me doesn't hold any water whatsoever. Although I do understand a sensitivity about putting something like that in a movie for small children. I know that we argue about this all the time, but I think that this was always risky for Disney, and risky it has become. Also, a number of petitions popped up online with people saying, let's get rid of this movie. And then, those didn't get a lot of traction, though, in the news. Although it sure did when Russia announced that they might ban the movie, because Russia's very anti-LGBT, by the way. But Russia has said that they have a law, it's official, they're officially anti-LGBT. That's not funny, actually. They have a law in Russia against gay propaganda aimed at children. And so they've said they're going to watch the movie and make a decision as to whether or not they're going to release it. So that means another headline is coming. Because, on one hand, Disney could be like, whoo, it's a good thing all this happened 2 weeks before release. But, now the situation is gaining momentum, and who knows what it's going to look like in 2 weeks. So one has to wonder, is this the first and last gay Disney character? Particularly in a film that's supposed to be all ages. Bill Condon, the director of the film, is panicking. There was another headline over the weekend with him saying, I don't know why everybody's making such a big deal out of this. They've blown it out of proportion. And to that I would say, Bill Condon is a gay himself, and he took a huge risk with this property for Disney, with apparently not any oversight, and he wanted credit for doing this. And so he's the one who exaggerated, because I've seen the movie, and it's not as big a deal as he made it seem in that Attitude magazine interview. So it's totally his own fault, and things have just this, and the narrative has gotten away from him. And I do think the LeFou as gay announcement was the turning point for this movie and how it was perceived, and it's a problem from several angles. All ages families are nervous about it. And again, as I said, I think understandably, because Bill Condon was so vague about what he's like a explicitly gay moment. And he looped Gaston into it, really playing up that LeFou had a crush on Gaston. And I think that, families got their imaginations, running away from them. And as I told you, I've seen the movie. I don't think it's a problem for anyone, and I don't think Gaston actually does factor in at all. I didn't see any evidence of LeFou having a crush on him. So I don't know where obviously Bill Condon and Josh Gad decided that, but it does not come through in the movie whatsoever. But then the other problem is, and I think this is what hurt them with critics, is that for people who are in the LGBT community and who are pro-LGBT, the actual representation is, I think, because it's played for laughs, borderline offensive. I wasn't sure if it was offensive. I'm starting to get the feeling that it is offensive. And so I think that it caused a number of critics to turn on the movie, not only because they were disappointed that the representation didn't materialize, but they were upset with what did materialize. So that's, I think, another problem. So And so this is a huge loss potentially for Disney. This was supposed to be the live action fairy tale movie that opened on par with superhero movies, and now that is very likely not the case. We'll see. And for what? A huge loss for what? Because again, I don't think the representation was appropriate. Interestingly enough, and they've been very quiet about it. They haven't talked about it at all, really. Actually, they haven't talked about it one bit. We've talked about it because it was revealed in that prologue clip that they released. But Fox's Alien Covenant features a gay couple, and it seems to be done more organically and not tokenism. You know, that they just happen to be gay, but they're one of the couples on this ship. So it'll be very interesting to see how that plays out for that movie. But that's an R-rated horror film, and so it's not an all-ages movie. It's a shame. I hope the Beauty and the Beast can rally because it's a fantastic film. One I think has Oscar potential, but is not looking good. I haven't seen a movie turned on like this since the DCEU. It's shocking. All right, so we'll see. We'll definitely keep an eye on this. Now, this certainly isn't helping Bob Iger's presidential aspirations. Yes, that's the second story of the day. Disney CEO is considering a run for president. Now, he's been encouraged to do this for quite some time, to run on the Democratic ticket, interestingly enough. You might be like, why is that a question? Someone from Hollywood, of course, would be on the Democratic ticket. Well, Bob Iger does serve on Trump's advisory board, CEO advisory board. The one that the Uber CEO recently quit because he got, just totally bombarded with negative tweets. And, tweets can kill. But Bob Iger, though, won't attend any public gatherings of that board. I guess he just maybe tweets Trump back by direct message, right? Because he's certainly not going to be publicly attached to this. But anyway, what's happening here is that because Trump won the presidency and he went directly to the White House without having to stop off in the governor's mansion or the mayor's mansion, other business people are saying, maybe I'd like to be president too. Oprah included. She's seriously considering a run in 2020. But Bob Iger is as well. And he met with Bloomberg, actually, Mike Bloomberg, to talk about how he successfully transitioned from the business world to the political world. Many people wanting Bloomberg to run this previous election, but he decided he would end up only hurting Hillary. Fateful decision, Bloomberg. But anyway, I guess Bob Iger would run on the platform of Disney is so full of win, wouldn't you like America to be that full of win? And I have to say, to some degree, considering that the 5 highest grossing films of 2016 were all Disney movies, he might have a little bit of, I think that not only will the LeFou situation hurt him, but perhaps ESPN, which is really weighing that company down. So anyway, I wanted to address a couple of things about Bob Iger. When I saw this story break late last week, in the comments section, someone said, "Don't get ahead of yourself, Bob. Walt built the Disney company, not you." To which I was like, whoa, Bob Iger is hugely responsible for Disney's current success. And so I'm going to give you a quick history of Disney from a CEO perspective. So Walt died suddenly and quite tragically. And because Walt, wonderful man, but a bit of a narcissist, he had a very big ego. It was very difficult many times. I'm a big Walt fan. I've read a lot of biographies about him. But he didn't prepare a protege. He didn't have someone ready to take over for him. And in fact, being a little bit of, he didn't really think that well of women, which is certainly hard to realize one day when you realize your hero wouldn't think much of you. But anyway, he didn't prepare his daughters to take over the company business, but he handed it over to his son-in-law, Ron Miller, who was a former pro football player. And of course, because he had no experience and no knack for the business, promptly ran it into the ground. And Disney actually was almost sold off. But luckily, Michael Eisner came in and saved the day, along with Frank Wells and Jeffrey Katzenberg, who saved Disney Animation. Michael Eisner, also a bit of a narcissist, really wanted to be the face of Disney, and made some stupid decisions for the company. But still, at the end of the day, Michael Eisner did, make it rise like the phoenix and go on its current path. However, when Frank Wells tragically was killed, Frank Wells was like the Roy Disney of this new leadership. He was handling the business side of things. But he died tragically in a helicopter crash. Many things on the Disney lot are named after him. apparently a wonderful man. And Jeffrey Katzenberg wanted to take over his job, but Michael Eisner, who didn't like the fact that Jeffrey Katzenberg had such ownership over the animation success, gave it instead to Michael Ovitz, who came over from CAA. He was an agent and decided to cross over to the business side of things, much like Brad Gray did over at Paramount. And both of them ended up getting fired, although no one ever got a golden parachute quite like Michael Ovitz when he left Disney. But the whole thing still caused Jeffrey Katzenberg to quit and famously formed DreamWorks with Steven Spielberg and David Geffen, and of course DreamWorks Animation, which for a while really gave Disney a run for its money in animation. But Bob Iger eventually came along, and he did a fabulous job beefing up Disney. He was the one who, while watching a parade, saw everybody cheering for the Pixar characters and said, "Holy crap, we don't own those." So his first big purchase was Pixar. And of course, he did a wonderful job strong-arming them into that by saying, you don't have to let us acquire you, but we have the right to do sequels to Toy Story with or without you, so do you want to be involved or not? That was pretty brilliant. So they got the Pixar acquisition, then they of course purchased Marvel, and then most recently Lucasfilm. And it's gone really well. I think the only thing that holds Bob Iger back is that I saw a special celebrating Shanghai Disneyland's opening, a very ambitious park, the biggest Disney castle in the world. It has a ride in it and everything. Oh, I wish I could go there. But a beautiful Tron ride. But anyway, he was speaking on the special, and he was just so awful. His public speaking was just horrible. Being a public speaker has always been a big part of being the head of Disney because you introduce TV shows. Walt, of course, was fabulous at it. So cozy, even though he had some not so great qualities. And Michael Eisner was not actually that bad either, introducing, some Disney TV specials. But you can see why Bob Iger doesn't do it, because he's just absolutely horrible. In fact, when I saw it on the Shanghai Disneyland special, I was surprised that Disney Publicity allowed him to go out there like that. They weren't like, didn't he practice? And weren't they like, maybe you shouldn't do this, Bob? Or just you should speak off the cuff? Because I think he was clearly reading lines that were prepared for him, because he was awful. He was really bad. He cannot speak in public. So if Bob Iger truly is considering a presidential run in 2020, he should get started practicing his public speaking immediately. I'm curious, would any of you vote for Bob Iger? It always depends on the situation and who, of course, is on the other side of the ticket. I mean, the competitor, which I'm assuming will be Trump. But it's been a very eventful 2 months already. So who knows what will happen in the next 4 years. So the third story of the day, it's all Disney again. I guess that also speaks to Bob Iger's qualifications. But we're talking now about Jared Leto potentially joining the Disney juggernaut. In fact, it looks like he is joining. He's finally been recruited by the biggest gun in Hollywood, Disney. So it's interesting to me because despite all the frustration and embarrassment of him playing the Joker for Suicide Squad being cut out of the movie, even though he's who everybody paid to go and see, it has ended up, I think, definitely being worth it for Jared Leto. Because I think Hollywood realized that everyone did pay to see Jared Leto and wants to see more of Jared Leto, especially because they didn't get any in Suicide Squad, even in the extended cut. Huge public interest in what he did, not only with the Joker, but what he's going to do otherwise. And so you're seeing him get a lot of roles that are very similar to the Joker. For instance, he's going to play, I believe, a replicant in the upcoming Blade Runner 2049, a la Rutger Hauer. I think that's excellent casting. I think Jared Leto is going to knock that out of the park. And I think he's also very well selected to star in Tron, a new Tron movie. Now, the only thing I would caution him is that he should look at Michael Sheen's performance, where he was kind of doing a Jared Leto, poor man's Jared Leto impression, and that was awfully embarrassing. In fact, as I've told you before, my friend leaned over to me during the movie and said, "There goes Michael Sheen's career," and she was correct. So embarrassing. But let's see what Jared Leto does with it. And there's not clear if there will be any holdovers from Tron Legacy, a beautiful yet horribly flawed movie. Either behind the camera holdovers like Joseph Kosinski, who did Oblivion with Tom Cruise, which also had problems. Joseph Kosinski, not a good story guy. Visuals, though, fantastic, although he's already contributed them. And then also, of course, Garrett Hedlund and Olivia Wilde. I wouldn't take any of those people, to be perfectly honest with you. So anyway, the idea is that this will be, not so much a sequel, not necessarily a reboot, just, a new story in the Tronverse. And it's going to take a couple of things from the potential Tron 3. Kosinski's been talking about it, maybe because he knew this deal was coming, and he was like, I'm going to have everyone talk about how they wish that I was making Tron 3, although that didn't happen when the story broke. Everyone was like, yeah, Tron Legacy had a lot of problems, so whatever. Although I think with Jared Leto's involvement, now suddenly a lot of us are a lot more excited. But anyway, the idea is that he will play a character called Ares, who's been referenced in Tron mythology now. But this is, take place in the real world with ISOs crossing over. Those are the digital people who, came about themselves. They aren't computer programs personified. They're, an evolution. They're, digital life, so to speak. And, at the end of the Tron Legacy, of course, Olivia Wilde's Quora went out into the real world. So it looks like some of her fellow ISOs or some other entity is going to follow suit, and that would be Jared Leto. Although we already have an Ares in Wonder Woman, so that'll be interesting indeed. And I wonder if he will be a digital god of war. But I think, speaking of digital, it'll be interesting what kind of digital powers he might have. Will this be Disney's Ghost in the Shell? The idea of a human being able to hack via their brain, control computers, perhaps travel digitally along, fiber optics, a little bit like Livewire can travel as electricity, the Superman villain. So I think it sounds pretty good, and I think Jared Leto, he's getting a real niche carved out for himself, playing heavily made up, intriguing weirdos. So good for him. I think these are all wonderful properties, and he's really nailing it. He's also supposed to direct a thriller. I don't know how he's going to find the time for it, and I would be curious, because Jared Leto did such a poor job directing himself in Suicide Squad. I think he clearly needs someone to help him. I would be surprised if he's able to direct anyone else, even though I do think he's a very talented actor. All right, so as for the viewer question of the day, this comes, it's also in regards to Disney. This comes from Enamavix. Enamavix says, question: is there a rule that says other animation studios can't make a princess animated movie? I know it's Disney's forte, but it would be nice to see other animation studios create their own line of princesses. Great question, Enamavix. And of course, you can see why doesn't anyone compete with Disney on a number of different platforms. But when it comes to princesses and animated princesses, they did try. They had the same question themselves. And there are two famous instances that did not work out. There was Fox's Anastasia, and also, I forget who the company was that distributed it. I didn't write it down. But Swan Princess also came out as a competitor. These are older movies. They're cult hits. They're things that people still rent. I believe both of them are probably on Netflix, I would think. I'm not sure. You can easily get them. I'm sure they're like on iTunes. And I thought Swan Princess was mediocre, but I really liked it. I think, Anastasia's not, neither of them is as good as a Disney princess movie, but Anastasia has certain charms to it for sure. But I think part of the problem is that Anastasia, for instance, I'm not sure how it was done, if they did it with rotoscoping, like copying live action performances. But Anastasia seemed so much like a live action film, you kind of felt like, why aren't I just watching a live action movie? But so anyway, neither one worked out. And so everybody was like, animation's very expensive, so nobody wanted to sink any more money into something that clearly wasn't gelling. Now, maybe eventually somebody could crack it someday. But I think that, as I said with Beauty and the Beast, although again, who knows now, considering how things have developed so horrifically in just a short amount of time, but I was thinking that fairy tales and princess movies would have to go live action after Beauty and the Beast being so fabulous. But we'll see. I think that if Beauty and the Beast continues to implode, Frozen will keep things anchored in animation. So animation fans who are horrified by my comments in my review on Friday, there's still hope for you as Beauty and the Beast implodes. So that's why other animation studios haven't followed suit. I think that there's so much money to be made in princess movies that I don't know why they don't try again, but they don't, and I think it's unfortunate. But Disney really understands princesses. Even their Elena animated series on the Disney Channel is quite spectacular. So I'm curious, what do you guys think? What do you think of today's top 3 stories? And also, what do you think of Enamavix's question about animated princesses? Do you think other studios should give it another shot? Or do you agree with me that maybe it's going live action? Write your thoughts down below, and especially if you would vote for Bob Iger for president. Hilarious! Write your thoughts down below. Thank you so much for tuning in, and you can check out some more videos right now.